Come on, once again.
Hello, once again, listening people. It's me, Ryan Slewinski here, but I'm not alone. I'm joined by my partner in crime, my cohort, the second best in the world, Bartek. How are you going?
Yeah, not too well. I mean, you keep making it awkward for me to start by saying hello, and you know, don't let me fit it in. But fuck it, I'm doing it anyway. Hello!
You make it so awkward.
You make it awkward. This is tradition, Ryan. Over 300 episodes of tradition.
I do not. I say hello to them, then I say I'm this person. Oh no, hello, Bartek.
You have to remind them. You have to greet them and remind them that they're listening people, and then shut up for a second. And then I greet them, and I don't need to remind them because you already have done it.
You want to follow a script, and I want to make it natural. 2.5 hours of natural conversation.
Well, to that I have to line.
What was that? Doom once again.
Throughout this episode, I'm going to ask you for my line, Ryan.
And every time you speak, every so often, I'll just whisper, Doom.
It'll be the new version of our SANTACLAUSRA for Sandy Claus.
Doom once again. Doom once again.
Yeah. But by the way, speaking of that, you're listening to Pictures Powwow, the podcast in which we review a film that has come recommended from someone, whether it's myself, like this episode, Ryan
once again.
Ryan, or next episode, and listening people's suggestion last week.
Doom once again, yeah. And you recommended the cinematic classic Doom 2 Back in Action, as the DVD describes it. Now, if there are people typing on their keyboards or with their thumbs on their phones or whatever writing device, if you're sending it through a carrier pigeon, then maybe a typewriter, don't get angry if the title of this episode isn't just Doom 2. We're going off of the immaculate DVD copy that Bartek has, which calls it Doom 2, Doom with, of course, a colon after it, 2, Back in Action. I was almost going to say once again. You saw my face. You saw it going once again. But it isn't. It's Doom 2, Back in Action. Not to get confused with Looney Tunes. Back in Action.
Yeah, I made that reference last week. I was going to say people are going to write in because when you first said the title, you made it sound like a comma instead of a colon.
Yeah. I should have it like the Tumbi 2 game where it's like Tumbi ! 2. That's how that game is spelled, written down. And I wrote that on the internet somewhere, and the person responded with, "Why are you putting that after the name? It should be this after the number." I'm like, Incorrect. It's
Ryan had the high ground.
I like Obi-Wan of Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show fame. I had the high ground. But Bartek, you recommended a Bollywood feature film, which of course everyone you should check out. It is only 2.5 hours long, so it's only as long as a Marvel film. So you have no reason to complain that the film is too long.
Yeah, and slightly longer than The Martian, which I watched straight after Doom 2 for some reason.
What a combination! If there was a Looney Tune in Doom 2 Back in Action, which one would be in it?
I think it'd be one of the more energetic ones. So I'm thinking maybe Yosemite Sam?
That's a good one, actually, if they went to America.
Yeah. Well, they go to South America.
What about Taz? They could have got Taz.
Yeah, he was one of the ones I was also thinking
I was thinking
of.
about Taz the whole time. Like, I wish he was the chief. When they, the elusive chief.
If they had a third partner, maybe Foghorn Leghorn?
Oh, no, he would be too much of a gentleman for these two.
I'd really like to hear him sing "My Name is Ali," though.
Oh, I would like to hear him just say, I say, Doom 2 once again.
Doom, my Charlie!
I said, Doom, my Charlie! I would love to hear them do Bollywood. All of the Looney Tunes, where Foghorn Leghorn would just be like, and I say, once again.
Oh, that would actually fit, yeah. Because he repeats himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I say,
Maybe
once
that's
again.
why I was thinking of him. Yeah.
That's actually pretty decent.
Yeah.
And then you got Daffy just losing his shit at the plot. All right, people, if you've not seen the film, we recommend you watch it. The plot of it is very complicated to describe, honestly, but if you had to break it down as a quick bite-sized thing to treat the people, Bartek, how would you describe Dhoom 2? How would you say, guys, you should check out Dhoom 2. Here's what you should look out for.
So the crux of the film is about two Mumbai police officers who are trying to catch a notorious international thief who only goes by the name A, just the letter A.
Yes, not to get confused with the TV show Pretty Little Liars, whose super master criminal also goes by the letter A.
Yes.
Not to get it confused.
Or the A-Team. There's just one guy.
Oh, yeah, it's just one guy. Actually, well, guys, the story gets a little bit more complicated.
Yes,
it becomes more than one guy.
Yes, well, this is just the beginning of the
This is just the beginning.
It becomes the A-pair.
And yeah, that is it. Two Mumbai detectives, police officers are trying to find this criminal, and shenanigans ensue. So we've told you the basic things. Now go off, watch the film, come back and listen to us ramble on about Dhoom 2, once again, back in action.
Once again, back in action. No, that's the third film. Once again, back in action.
Okay, Bartek, my history is very minor with this.
Mm-hmm.
Over the years, you have mentioned Dhoom. And Dhoom 2.
I think my
and
first...
rarely ever Dhoom 3.
I think-
Rarely any references to Dhoom 3, which is actually the more recent one, obviously. It would be weird if Dhoom 2 was more recent, but...
Well, 10 years ago at this point, yeah.
Yeah, but within our knowing of each other,
Yeah.
Dhoom 2, Dhoom 3 had come out.
Definitely the first mention was in our Doom episode for obvious reasons.
Not in Bend It Like Beckham, in which you thought one of the people from Dhoom was on a poster in the background.
I suppose maybe, but I don't associate him with Doom 2 though. So,
but you may have said Dhoom in that Bend It Like Beckham episode, and that's like our third episode of the show.
It's
So
one of the first.
that
four,
could
yeah.
be the earliest. You see, Bartek has a pattern. Got to mention Saved by the Bell, Grand Theft Auto, and Dhoom 2.
It's been a while since I
Specifically
mentioned
Dhoom.
Saved by the Bell. Gotta remember that.
Yeah, you got to remember that. Screech is dead now, so that's how much time has passed since we started the podcast. When we first started the podcast, Screech was alive. He was
in the film,
alive,
too.
and now he's dead, Bartek. You killed Screech.
I remember you broke that news to me. I'm like, wait, what?
And I sat you down, I put my hand
I
on
think
your
we'll-
shoulder, like, Bartek, Screech is dead.
I think we were in the middle of watching a film on like a movie night too. It was like, whoa, that's fucked up.
Yeah, and then we had a little cry. And then you told me why he was called Screech. And then we all laughed and had a good old time.
I think I told you that in the first episode, didn't I?
I think you
Why?
just said that's just his name.
Yeah, and that's
not
the
a real
explanation.
answer. That's not a real answer. Okay, my history with... I don't know anything about these Dhoom films. I have a DVD copy of the first film because we found it at a secondhand store, and it has the funniest DVD cover I've ever seen in my life. And I didn't remember that these films were called Dhoom. And like... You've seen the DVD cover. The name Dhoom is not what your eyes even go towards. It's like the name on the cover is almost irrelevant. It's like, you said, all right, this is Dhoom. I've told you about this. I'm like,
Yeah,
where does it say that, Bartek? Like right here. I'm like, but Bartek, look at this. And I point to the rest of the cover.
And then I was telling you, like, oh, this isn't actually the official poster, you know? This is just a random funny image that they're using.
A series of funny images. But I don't know too much about these until having to watch them. I think you may have mentioned loose plot points, but I didn't really remember anything. And then at the end of last episode, you kind of gave me a recap on Dhoom, the first one, being like, okay, here's what you need to know. Cop, criminal, they become buddies and they solve a crime and they take out the bad guy, and then blah, they don't get on, now they get on, and here we go. And
in the first scene of Ali in this film, like, it's kind of establishing that thing of like, oh yeah, he's not a cop, he's, you know, still working with him, but then it's revealed, oh, he's joined the cops now.
yes, yeah, I got that vibe, but I really didn't know. You've talked about Dhoom, but in the way where it's just like you've made reference to its existence, but not the substance.
I've never talked about the plot, I don't think.
So I didn't really know what I was getting into. I knew that this was a sequel. I knew that it was going to be the type of sequel where I didn't really need to rely on the first one. So I went in. I've seen a few Bollywood films because of this podcast, and I have had a good sampling of them at this point. So I had a ball at the beginning when it was giving me what I've wanted more of in these Bollywood movies, which is Indian soap opera editing style, in which it's like a million cuts and fades and like the constant like zoom, zoom noises and the techno music and the rave music, and I was like, this is what I wanted.
And of course,
this is always what I've wanted.
And since we've recently celebrated 70 years on the throne with Queen Elizabeth, the beginning of this film was very appropriate.
So it was a lot of the first chunk of the movie was delivering like the constant stream of dance numbers that just abruptly entered the movie. There's no like smooth transition like there was in Om Shanti Om.
That's very Bollywood. They're just these magic realism segments.
But even then, like Main Huna and Om Shanti Om was much smoother in their transition to musical numbers. This was just like, bam, now we've got one. Fuck you, Ryan. And I loved it. I was like, yeah, boy.
And like a few minutes before, like you might hear like part of the chorus, like sexy lady on the floor when you first meet the woman.
Or Dhoom, Dhoom once again. And you're like, oh, here we go. Then the Dhoom Dhoom once again song lasts 15 minutes. And then it's other things are happening.
Yeah, I remember later on in the film in the Mardi Gras scene, like you can hear bits of like the next song, and it was... I'll get into my history soon, but like one thing about it that I'll say now is that I haven't seen this film in quite a long time. I remembered most of the songs from it, but it was that thing where I couldn't remember quite which film they came from. So there was a lot of moments throughout where I was like, oh yeah, that's from this. And there was a bit of like the next song playing during that Mardi Gras scene where I'm like, oh yeah, they have an extra version of like the Dhoom theme that comes later.
So that is about it. I watched it last night. You gave me a DVD copy, which was weird and wild. The image pulsated the entire time that I watched it, so I felt as if not only did I go through a journey, my eyes physically went through a journey as well. And there was anti-piracy stuff before the film, which was hilarious, in which it was like FBI warning, and I'm like thinking about how your mum got this from like a flea market guy who clearly burnt a copy of it, but he also burnt like got a copy of like all the anti-piracy stuff, in which then it's like FBI warning. And then I was expecting in Australia we have the iconic anti-piracy one where it's like a blacksmith hitting a red hot poker, and then this English voice going, "Don't let them burn a hole in your pocket. Piracy." And then it's like this whole thing. I was waiting for that, but no, what we got instead was a bunch of random Indian actors who I don't know, with a camera, like a shitty early 2000s digital camera pointed at them in the studios of whatever buildings they were in, just sitting around. And then it's almost like the person walked up to them with the camera and say, "Oh, can you say it now, actually?" And then they just turn around and say no to piracy. And then it moves to the next person. "Remember, say no to piracy. Say no to," and it was just 15 different Indian actors saying the same thing half-heartedly.
Yep. So Ryan has now had the experience of being a mid-2000s person in Australia who watches Bollywood film by getting the DVDs from the shop in Dandenong that sells them.
From
Bubba's Home Entertainment.
Bubba's Home Entertainment. Shout out, Bubba. You did a great job. I loved when the image was constantly vibrating and the subtitles were wiggling because they couldn't focus in. He was my favorite character in the film. Vibration.
The edit.
What about you? History?
So, brief history about me with Bollywood. I've been watching Bollywood films probably since I was about 11. I've fallen off in recent years, but in the formative years where I was growing up, becoming an adult, I would see them relatively frequently. Maybe I'll see 2 or 3 a year. Mum and I would always go see the Shah Rukh Khan films that were coming out. So a lot of my Bollywood experience is from growing up, not so much my 20s. And this was this one came out in 2006, so that's when I turned 13. So I was, 1 or 2 years into me liking Bollywood films. And with Dhoom 2 specifically, my stepbrother and I had watched Dhoom 1 on a DVD copy. And I remember
Was it the DVD that I have with the funky cover?
I don't think it was. No,
You missed out.
We've probably got it lying around somewhere. And I remember it was the thing like my mum, she'd bought it and she like handed it to us and said something like, "Oh, you guys should watch this. It's apparently like a buddy cop film. You might like it." And we were like, "Yeah, all right." We weren't particularly interested in it, but we watched it. And it was a fine film. Nothing too special from what I remember. I think I've seen it again once more after seeing Doom 2 just to remind
compare.
myself. Just remember, was that better than I remembered? I'm like, oh no, it's still fine. It's still a fine film.
Hear that, everyone? Bartek likes Doom 2 better
Yeah.
than Doom 1.
So I remember when my mum was like, oh, Doom 2's in the cinema. We should go and see it at like Southland or something. And we're like, okay, yeah, sure, why not? I've seen the first one. We'll see the second one. I remember the second one, was escalated a lot more. There was a lot more, locations in it because I think the first one was just in, the city in India where they were based. There was a lot of colorful visuals in it. The villain was a bit of an escalation. I remember the villain in the first film was, just a regular like leader of a gang kind of thing. This one's like an international criminal.
And main character.
Yeah, main character. Abhishek Bachchan, who I was a bit familiar with. He's the son of famous Amitabh Bachchan. So yeah, it was just a thing of like, oh, it wasn't, sequel to a film that I wasn't particularly too fond of, ended up being really good, and I was very fond of it. And I remember distinctly, because I've mentioned before that, the way I view Bollywood films is a bit different from the way I view Western films, which is obvious they're completely different things. I remember distinctly with Doom 2, when I came home from the cinema, I watched an episode of The Simpsons.
Okay.
And that was a bit of a huge culture shock, because when you watch a Bollywood film, I remember when we watched Main Hunna, you kind of described it as kind of like a Stockholm syndrome, where you really have to invest yourself in this world for a period of time, 2.5 hours, close to 3 sometimes. And you really get a sense of like, okay, this is the type of entertainment that I'm watching now. So going home and then watching, very popular animated sitcom, it was like, oh, this is a completely different kind of story. Remember, that was kind of a wacky
So
thing.
it wasn't an Apu-centric episode of The Simpsons?
No, I think it was the one with the Simpson gene.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
So it was a Lisa episode.
It was a Lisa. That's a different. That's a complete culture shock. I mean,
Female
culture
protagonist
and gender difference there for you. Wow. Yeah. So briefly, what about Doom 3? Thoughts? Like, are you a fan of Doom 3? It's the lowest rated on IMDb.
Yeah, I think I remember
5.3. That's pretty bad.
Yeah, I think I remember when we were doing the Doom episode, I briefly like summarized all 3 films of being like, Doom 1's okay, Doom 2 is
when we did the Doom episode.
The Doom episode. Sorry,
you did say we're doing the Doom 2 episode now
with the Doom episode with The Rock.
And Rosamund Pike. Giving up a chance to be in Harry Potter.
Yeah. I think I said something like, oh, Doom 1's okay, Doom 2 is great, and Doom 3 had a good villain.
Oh, wonderful.
So it's like, what didn't I say about Doom 3 there?
The rest of the film. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a lot to go on now with Doom 2. I do feel as if parts of my enjoyment were removed because I hadn't seen the first film.
Okay.
There were large swaths of this in which I was grappling with, should I care more? Because this is if I had seen the first one, would I care more? Would I give the benefit of the doubt more? Would I let this go more? Primarily, and you can fill me in because you've seen all of them, I was thinking to myself, oh, I thought these 2 guys, the 2 cop characters who are on the cover, who you mention all the time, were going to be important to the film, but they aren't. It's the 2 villains, the A and what's her name again?
Suneri, I think.
Yeah, they're the lead characters. They're the protagonists, and it's weirdly structured because you don't know that for a very long time. Like, we don't know who A is for a long time. She doesn't get introduced until
right before the intermission, yeah.
And they're the characters that you root for and you feel for, and the 2 cop characters get barely any time in the movie. Weirdly enough, they don't get too much stuff to do. They aren't in it a lot. It feels like there's large swaths where I'm like, oh, I keep forgetting that this Ali character is somebody that I am supposed to think of as a lead in any way. So that was throwing me, because I think if I had seen the first film, that could have been more of a leeway. It was like, well, I've already spent an adventure with them, and now I'm watching another film where they're a part of the adventure instead of leading it. But here I am in Dhoom 2 with all of this build-up of these actors, and this is the story from the previous one, and they've even been referenced in Om Shanti Om, where it's like, hey, look, Dhoom 5, and how crazy it is about these two guys.
Yeah, that was a year after Dhoom 2, so it was making fun of the fact that it's becoming like a franchise.
Yeah, and I was thrown by that. It was just such a weird thing, because also in these other Bollywood movies that we've watched, they make it very clear who the protagonists are.
Yeah.
This didn't.
Yeah, Shahrukh and Salman, you got to put them head first if they're the leads.
They're head first. They're the guys, and you're watching these guys. And so I was a little bit lost in the woods with that. And there were things, obviously, like picking up who these characters are. As we have with every movie you watch for the first time, you're gauging the environment of the film, whether it be the tone, the physical setting, the time period, the characters, all that. So I'm trying to get all of this happening, but then it's throwing these curveballs at me where I feel like I wasted my investment in time, because I'm spending so much time in the first half of this film trying to figure out these two cop characters. And then the film itself is like, they're irrelevant to this, really. What you really need to care about is actually these two characters over here. And I threw my hands up in the air going, well, fuck me then, I guess. How stupid was I for trying to figure this out in the way that I was? And if I had seen the first film, that wouldn't affect me as much, if you know what I mean by that.
I think I understand that,
because
yeah.
I would have spent a 2+ hour adventure with them in another movie. So then when I come into this one, I wouldn't be needing to figure out these things as well. Like if you watched an ongoing franchise thing, and you go, oh, well, I'm going to watch Iron Man 3, and then you haven't watched the other Iron Mans, and you're like, oh, well, actually in Iron Man 3, he actually is out of his suit for most of the movie, and you're like, what? I thought this was an Iron
it's like,
Man
this is
movie.
the entry in the film series where, like, you don't focus on them as much. It felt like that kind of thing to you?
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. Or if, say, when we did Inspector Pink Panther,
Mm-hmm.
if you didn't know that Inspector Clouseau
Very
is
funny that
not
you're bringing that up, by the way.
important in the first Pink Panther movie, it can throw you off, because culturally you've been told he's the lead guy in these movies.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen till the second film and then onwards.
I think that might have happened to me, yeah, when I first watched it.
But I didn't know, so I watched Dhoom too, and there was parts of it where I was really going, man, I think I should have watched the first film to get this. Like, there was some character motivations, some character trait things that the film just was like, here it is, and I'm sitting there going, okay, you haven't earned any of this for me. And it's clear they earned it in the first film, such as the relationship between the two cops. I'm just sitting there going, oh, okay, well, what are these guys' deal? And it's like, well, Ryan, you see, in Dhoom 1, we had a whole story of what their deal is. I'm like, that's fair. It's not up to the second film. That's just a part of the beast, because, yeah, I you gave me the kind of vibe like, oh, you can check it out. And this isn't say the film falls apart without having seen the first one. I got enough of it, but it was just, in my sampling of Bollywood films, this was very different to them. Very different in that lead protagonist journey way.
Yeah, there are definitely a few things I agree with there. With Dhoom 1, like, my summary thing last week is kind of just the broad strokes, because that's mostly what I remember. Just like, it's this type of story, so when this one started, I'm like, oh yeah, they had some sort of story like that led to this.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing you mentioned about them two not quite being the main characters in this buddy cop film, I remember, because this is my first time watching Dhoom 2 after having seen Dhoom 3. I remember in Dhoom 3, that was actually a big criticism that I had of it, where, the main one, Jay, still had a fair bit going on, but Ali was, like, just completely wasted in that film. Like, he basically only, like, flirted with this one woman every now and then, like, barely ever did anything else. And it's like, oh, why aren't they using this character that, I've gotten to know over 2 films? Like, he has a song in this one. He has, like, running jokes about, like, his mum and things like that.
Yeah, or his fantasy of getting with the girl. And
Yeah, so I almost had a weird thing of like, oh shit, that sentiment was kind of present in Doom 2 as well, where, like, they are in the film and they're definitely doing more than, Ali, at least in Doom 3, but yeah, it is following the thieves a lot more. And definitely early on, I was getting that vibe of like, A is a mysterious villain thief guy who, the cops don't really know, but we're getting a lot of him. Like, he's not a mystery to us, the audience.
The film does leave a bitter taste in my mouth because of these choices made, because the female cop character, whose name I cannot tell you, I thought she was going to be important to the story. They introduce her in a way where you can't forget her.
Yeah.
They sexualize her in a way that I found surprising. This is the most horny we've ever watched Bollywood Indian film we've ever watched. And I was absolutely shocked watching this. I really was, because we've talked about it in our previous endeavors here, outings, about, the sexuality stuff that they have, and, can't kiss, or this, or they can kiss, and there's all this nuances to it that I'm not as enveloped in. But I was surprised by how openly sexualizing of the characters this movie was, of men and women. And I thought, wow, they're being risque here. And her opening scene is very alluring from that visual standpoint of how they objectify her, of course. But is striking as well. This woman who's no nonsense, and she's shooting, and she's in charge, and everybody's kind of afraid of her and turned on by her. And she's got this legacy and this history with one of the main characters. And the other main character had a funny encounter with her to begin with the handcuff, and the handcuff thing kind of shows that she's actually a little bit dumb at points too, and she's got this history with A and all this drama, and when are they going to face off against each other? And then the film says, fuck it, we're bored with her. Now she's got her sister, who's a completely different character that we don't spend any time on developing as well.
That's always been one of my biggest things about this film. It's like, the way I remember it, because it's been a long time since I've seen it, it's like, oh yeah, the actress playing her is introduced in the first half, and then, but the point of the actress is in the second half. But no, it just ends up being that
she's useless.
She plays two characters who don't get an arc, really.
They serve no purpose. But the first one, the cop one, seemed like she did. I was excited for her character. I thought, this is going to be a really dynamic, fluid. There was this moment where they are at the house, and there's the pregnant wife there, and they're looking at the yearbook thing, and they're talking about, let's go to the reunion. I thought that was going to happen. I thought we were going to go to the reunion, and there was going to be a mixture of the main conflict of this diamond heist jewel thief guy, A, and the inner conflict of this guy who's tied down, but maybe there's something happening
relationship
here,
drama,
and you'll combine those and have them intersect. And no, they did nothing with it. So I threw my hands up at the end of this. At the end of Dhoom 2, I unfortunately have to say this is my least favorite Indian film we've watched thus far, because
that's fair enough.
I was so hooked at the beginning of it, and then I felt betrayed. There were twists and turns that I thought was really clever. I loved the ending of the intermission. I thought that was exciting when they're in the cinema and it's an international game, and bam, I was like, and the reveal that she's the number 2 thief and she's doing this, and then the double reveal that she's actually working with all of that was exciting, and and then the second half of it was just, it's this Indian soap opera romantic crap, and now we're in a different country, and now we got rid of this character and this character, and the pregnant wife doesn't even come back up again. Like, there's a cut at the end of the movie where 6 months have passed, and I'm like, his wife would have given birth by now. We're not gonna.
Oh no, we're just gonna conclude that one thread.
We're not gonna follow through on any of that. Oh, okay. Like the film doesn't want me to think about it anymore because that's irrelevant. We've moved past it. So unfortunately, like, I did like many sections of this. I thought it was a visually well-made movie because the flashy editing and the over-the-top 2000s-y visuals were appealing to me.
Yeah.
It reminded me of Resident Evil in a lot of ways. That Paul W.S. Anderson way of shooting things was very gaudy, and the music I enjoyed a lot as well, although they spammed it, but I found it kind of charming that they kept doing it.
I remember in previous Bollywood episodes that we've done, which I try to do one a year around, May, June, April-ish. I do mention that sometimes Bollywood films trying to have this kind of, I think the phrase was masala format, where it's like little bit of everything chucked in. And Dhoom 2 is always the one that kind of comes to my mind, because you do have, these comedy segments, action segments, relationship drama, not super villain, but like science fiction-y villainy thing going on. There's like a lot of different things coming together in this one product, which I know that I think literally last episode we were talking about how, like, if you try to do too much, you kind of appeal to no one. But with Bollywood films, it usually works for some reason. And this was kind of, an example that I always point to as like, oh yeah, you get a lot out of this one. It might, not always quite fit together, but there is some entertainment you get out of it.
It's not even the differences of, I understand that the differences of like genres and tones, but even in the other films we've watched, like for instance, what was I'm so sorry, I've forgotten the name of it.
Oh, God,
the one that we watched with the Khan that I liked.
Oh, Sultan.
There was a moment in that movie that really fucking angered me, where it was when he became like an asshole, like for 2 seconds, and then it like moved on.
And that was like the fall of the character, but it was way too brief.
Yeah, and it was so sudden, and it ruined the integrity. That's what I'm frustrated at, is character stuff. I don't mind the differences of like genre stuff, and now we're doing romance and twists and turns. It's just, man, if I knew that A and the lady was supposed to be as important as they were, fucking let me know that way earlier. Because I'm trying to, like, care about... again, I feel like I cared about the wrong people. And if I watched the film again, maybe it would work better.
Right.
But I was constantly like, oh, this is Dhoom 2. I have to care about the two Dhoom guys. I have to care about them. And his wife is pregnant, and the guy's making fun of him, and he wants a girl. And like, and I'm trying to care about the case that they're trying to solve. And then the movie's like, actually, fuck you, Ryan. It was about these two the whole time. And even then, I thought those two, I think they're actually pretty compelling. I would watch a movie of them. And then I realized I am watching a movie of them.
In retrospect, that joke in Om Shanti Om, where it's like, and this time he's not even in the film, makes a lot more sense now that we're talking about it.
Like, I don't know. Am I being too negative? Am I being too much?
No, it's valid. I've definitely had films where I spend most of it caring about the wrong thing or expecting the wrong thing. Like, oh, when's the film going to begin? Oh, it's over. That kind of thing. It's completely valid. I wasn't expecting it, but yeah, it all makes complete sense. I was watching this film, and often with Bollywood films, I'm like, oh, I wonder how Ryan will find this one. There are a lot of little things where I'm like, oh, yeah, he's not going to like this. But I wonder if there is going to be like a saving grace of some sort. I wasn't expecting, the caring about the wrong thing to be such a big one, though.
Yeah, like, because I did like what I was following. I like the female cop. I like the pregnant wife. I like our main guy feeling tied down, but he's also doing his job. I like the goofy friend who's the new cop, and he's horny, and he wants a girl, and he's going to try and get with the girl from this guy's part. Like, all of that was fun. And then you have the villain who's this over-the-top... a guy, and then the second best criminal in the world is trying to team up with him, and maybe all of that. I guess it's the second half that really dragged me down. I know when I lost it with the movie, and I don't know why this tipped me off, but I wonder if this is one of those moments you watched this movie last night and went, oh, this is a thing Ryan wouldn't like. As soon as the momentum of the story stopped to play basketball, I was like, oh, they're fucking me.
That's in the first half.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of where I went, we're going to waste time now, are we? Because the momentum of the film is actually pretty decent. Like, I didn't feel this was as... Well, this is shorter than some of the other ones we've done, but I didn't feel like this was too long. That's often a complaint I had. It's not pacing so much. It's more, what we spend time on, I would have adjusted differently, or I wish my expectations were elsewhere. And again, if I ever rewatch this, I'll know that, and maybe I'll appreciate that. I mean, the film literally opens with A, so in a way, it's kind of telling you this is about him. But again, it's called Dhoom 2. I'm following the adventures of the Dhoom boys from.
Yeah, and like I said, they weren't hiding A from us that much, so it was kind of showing its cards.
But that basketball scene, I was like, oh, fuck you. I was like, I lost it. I was like, really? And they're pouring the rain on them, and they're getting them all wet and
the rain
tight,
was very Bollywood.
And I just got so annoyed with this fucking basketball scene. It was just one of those, I'm like, oh great, now we're going to spend time on fucking nothing.
What is this, like Mike?
Yeah, they might as well have just shown like a static for 5 minutes and then them kissing at the end or whatever it was. Like, I just zoned out. I was like trying so hard, but they weren't saying anything. And I was like, oh God,
but
damn it.
They shook hands.
Oh, there was a funny moment where I was like talking about having needed to see the first film when at the beginning they're having the shootout on the boats and whatever, and they're getting the phone calls, and Jay, is it the main cop?
Yes.
He gets a phone call from the wife, and she's on the phone, and then it does like that dolly out of her being pregnant, and it was like, oh, for those who have seen the first film, you didn't see that, did you? Ooh, she's pregnant. Life has progressed.
I didn't
since
even
the
remember that
first
character.
one. I don't know. I don't know, but I laughed. I was like, oh, if I saw the first film, I would really appreciate this moment here. I can't wait to see this wacky character because she's fun. Oh, what's that? What's that? They left her at home and we never see her. I actually can't even tell you what her final scene was. Was it the yearbook scene? I actually can't remember.
I feel like it was in the first half, yeah.
Oh, she doesn't come back in the second half because we never go back to Mumbai in the second half, do we?
No, we don't.
So we never have to see her again.
I mean, Jay probably does, but in the cutaway
Yeah.
of 7 months, yeah.
Yeah.
The Martian also ends by cutting like half a year ahead.
Wait, doesn't he say that he's been living in that city for
Yeah,
6 months?
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
so
yeah.
he may not have even seen his
He was
newborn child.
Yeah, he was waiting for him to make a move. It's like,
He's
you're not
such
making
a
a move.
shitty dad. He's just like, oh, honey, you've just given birth? I've got to go to this nice exotic location for the next 6 months. Yeah. For the next who knows how long, and just wait for these criminals to pounce. Good job, man. What a hero. I love that guy.
By the way, I intended to bring this up, but you actually brought it up first. You mentioned the Pink Panther.
Mm-hmm.
There was an actor in this film who was in a Pink Panther film.
Oh. So was it an Indian actor?
Mm-hmm. Actress, even.
Actress?
Mm-hmm.
Was it one of the 2 main female leads?
Mm-hmm.
Was it the second best criminal in the world? Or,
Mm-hmm. Yep, Aishwarya Rai. She was in the Pink Panther 2.
With Beyonce?
Yeah. I remember when that film was coming out, that was a thing that was like trying to drag Bollywood fans to go see it. It's like, hey, Aishwarya's in this film. You should go see it.
Did they?
Fans.
Did they?
I think so. We did.
Is that why you went to go see it?
I remember it was one thing. I was like, oh, Schweier's in it. That's an interesting thing. And similar to the thing I was mentioning about The Simpsons, like that was also really interesting because, you know, Bollywood actresses, you've seen this film, like sexy lady on the floor. She gets introduced, sexualized, like all this attention and the celebrity worship in India. And then in that film, you know, it's just an American film that happens to have this, you know, Indian lady in it, no fanfare. It was like, oh man, this is so different.
Do you ever wish that Western movies did that? where like in Marvel, Black Widow comes in and they're just like, sexy lady on the floor, and they're like shooting.
I was thinking more Michael Bay.
No. We need to go with the most mainstream successful thing, right? That's Marvel. Michael Bay hasn't made a movie in who knows how long now.
Yeah, true.
We need to have Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow. She's just like walking down the hallways, right? And then there's just a random shot of her on the beach thrusting in water as it goes up her body like it did in this.
That's right. Yeah, the second by the twin. Yeah, that's right. Introduction. Oh, there she is. Oh, montage of her doing things. And then she just takes them to her house. Oh, that's their first interaction.
Yeah, you know what's funny? You bring up Indian celebrity, blah. That moment reminded me of fucking Kojima introducing a female character in his fucking games.
You see like the R1 button in the corner. If you press it, like the characters like look down at the tits.
If only. God, I can't get it out.
If only Kojima.
No. If only, what was the dumb guy's name in this? Ali.
Ali, yeah.
Said to Jay, she can't wear clothes. She breathes with her skin.
She breathes through her skin.
She breathes through her skin, so she has to be skimpily dressed all the time. Oh fuck. No, if I can just interject, I do have positives. I don't want to just be Mr. Negatives. It's just there was something about this movie that rubbed me up the wrong way, but there were things that it did appeal to me. I loved the opening with Ali, where he's trying to be smooth and he's dropping his fucking ID, and it's very goofy. And I was hoping for more of that kind of shenanigans going on. I loved when they were going to steal that sword. I loved that whole set piece with all these characters running around. I loved that location. I thought it was really well done. I laughed every time they jumped off of something backwards in the starfish pose, slowly falling. I laughed every time. There was a lot of humor had here. Like, the film is very funny. I had a good laugh at the stop motion mixed with CGI bugs that they released in that one set. And then I had a good chuckle at one of the dramatic cop lines that Jay had, which is, doesn't Snow White have 7 dwarves? I had a good chuckle. I thought, oh man, this is something that would be in Hot Fuzz. That level of silly kind of like on the nose cop machismo thing. It's something really, really overdone. This is also like Baby's Day Out. Nobody looks down in this universe. There's a whole set piece where A is stealing something. You got this little rover drivey toy thing, and it's just underneath and goes like between the legs of guards, and they never look down. They can't hear below them either.
Well, Ryan, it was black on black. You can't see that.
Yeah, you can't see it and hear it moving in front of you. But if they stepped on it, that would give it away.
Yeah.
They have the sense of touch, but sight and hearing, gone.
They also don't look to the side because the claw thing grabbing the jewel itself was not camouflaged at all.
That was it. Yeah. A very cartoony logic at points. And again, some of the story twists and turns genuinely surprised me and thrilled me. There was this moment where she, the second best criminal in the world, when she was doing her thing and talking to him, and he was like, oh, betrayal. I kind of noted in my brain, I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if she was like a cop or something? And then, actually, you see, she's working for the cops. I'm like, there you go. Excellent. Like I've said with a lot of these ones we've watched, I think Main Huna is probably the one with the least amount of this, but I like the narratives, like the twists and turns and the story beats. Main Huna is the one where it's like, that's the one with the weakest story for me, where it's like, he's undercover. It's just 21 Jump Street Indian style, where he's like an undercover agent, but in high school.
Yep.
But the other ones we've watched, I've really engaged with the actual narratives. They do a really good job of, like you said, the Masala thing, where they're playing all these notes, but they really do a great job at throwing some really cool little twists at you, because you're ingratiated in the world so long that you're no longer thinking about narrative twists, at least not me.
Yeah.
So,
definitely in the recent years when, chatting to you and other people who aren't into Bollywood as much, like talking about how, the films are so long. And even for me, like when I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to watch one, or I picked one for the podcast, I do have that in the back of my mind, like, it's going to be really long. And even though, I notice like, we're 40 minutes into the film and it feels like not much has happened, like I didn't actually naturally feel that. It's like, everything's like happening at a steady enough pace. It's fleshing out things that are happening in the scenes. Like you do feel the length overall, but at the time, like it is going.
Oh,
like when the intermission happened, it was like 100 minutes in, and it was like, I could kind of recap the film kind of easily.
This was the best paced one we've watched of them. And I don't know if it's because it is also the shortest one. I think it's the shortest one. Maybe
by a bit.
By a bit.
They're all over like 2:20.
Yeah, but that was my main complaint with Om Shanti. I prefer Om Shanti Om, obviously, but
It's
it was too
one of the
long.
best, yeah.
It was a little too long for me. I was like, I could use 5-10 minutes trim. I didn't even want too much from that. It wasn't like I needed an hour off. It was just like, a little. And even with modern films, though, right, with the West, it is bigger time is back again, because that was also a thing back in the day. I mean, Ben-Hur is a very long movie. You know, old Hollywood used to make fucking long movies as well, but there has been a decline in that over the years, but now we're back up to it where people want to watch The Wolf of Wall Street, which is just as long as this film.
Probably,
yeah. Or The Irishman, right, which was like 3.5 hours.
Yeah, that was
long.
like 3:40, I think.
And there's no intermission for those bad boys.
No, but there are people online saying like you should watch it in 4 chunks.
I hate that. Tarantino would die in his grave when it's like Netflix uploaded that like episodic release of Hateful Eight, where it's like you could watch it in 8 episodes. Like, fuck you.
Did that actually happen?
Yeah, in America.
Wow.
But or Zack Snyder films where it's like, watch my 4-hour cut of Justice League. And so that's no longer even the kind of phrase to bring anymore as much. But even then, with those type of films, I mean, you would agree you've seen a lot of them with you and I are used to Western style filmmaking. Even then, Black Panther doesn't need to be that long. Right?
Yeah.
But this one here, Dhoom 2, I thought it was brilliantly paced. It was never my complaint. I didn't feel like it dragged. It was more, I wish I knew that I shouldn't have invested in this thing. And if a second watch ever happens, maybe it will flow better because of that. Or I do fear that I'll not like it more because it will feel like it drags. It's like, why are we spending on time on this if it doesn't matter? I was thrown that the second best criminal in the world, maybe I'm wrong, had no build up to them in the film. There was like no mentionings of their crimes or anything.
It feels
at any
like something
point.
you would have had, yeah. Because I remembered that there was a girl that A was working with, but I didn't remember exactly how she was introduced to the film. So when you had like, this obviously female spy, trying to steal the sword at the same time, it was like, okay, it kind of just hit me like, oh yeah, this was a thing, I guess.
That was a favorite scene when she undressed from her spy, like her camouflage gear. It's the most ludicrous thing ever.
Sexy lady on
the camera
phone.
might as well went up her ass. It was just. Did Michael Bay direct this one? You can tell a woman didn't direct this one, like Om Shanti Om.
Yeah, like Farah Khan. Aishwarya Rai. So you mentioned before that, like, you can't do certain things in Bollywood films, and this one, blew that expectation out the water. One of the controversies that I do remember, which I'm sure you've read about.
I read, but I want to hear more.
Yeah, the kiss scene with Hritik. So obviously, 2006, I was used to Western films and kissing happened. So I saw that, didn't think anything of it. And then my mum told me, like, oh yeah, that's actually a big controversy in India. Because that's a thing that doesn't really happen there. And when I was reading the trivia last night, it was mentioning that, like, the Bachchan family, were really upset because, she's going to marry into this. She was going to marry the main actor of this film, Abhishek.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're husband and wife. And I've never heard any sort of comment from him specifically. So it's saying, like, his family had a problem with it. It's,
right.
Yeah, kind of weird.
Maybe he's cool with that.
So, yeah. Well, he was like, you have to choose between the thief and me. It's like, I choose the thief in the film, but you in real life.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is interesting. If they were, like, to be wedded at this time.
I think the trivia said it was like the reveal happened long after the film was
not
released.
long after.
So maybe it was a secret at the time. I don't know.
It's just interesting that they cast her in the role that they do. If, the lead act, when I'm saying, like, why didn't they make her the female cop? Like, I don't know. I thought she was great, though. I thought she was very fun, over the top.
She was.
Really sold those high emotional moments. I mean, I laughed a little bit when she's, like, crying her eyes out. I'm like, really? For this fucking guy? All right, whatever. The guy whose disguises suck as much as Dana Carvey's and
he's a master
of disguise.
Did you like the shot of him at the party near the end where it like showed all his disguises throughout the film as he's walking? Queen Elizabeth, old guy, the geek.
I don't know why they said the Queen Elizabeth one. That's never mattered to our main character.
It's like, it's like the first film the first scene that establishes, but you don't really talk about it. But it's like,
But for you, the audience, you need to know. I lost it. You know what was the bit where I fucking broke down in tears. I broke down in tears because I really was like, am I watching an Indian soap opera TV show?
Mm-hmm.
Is every... I wish that they did it when it freeze framed and went in black and white at the very end when they're on the waterfall. And I think it's when she shot the guy or when they're all looking at each other, and it would show each one of their reactions, and it would freeze frame, go in a Dutch angle, go in black and white, and make that.
It's like the shot reaction, slow motion, then douche, black and white.
And I wish they put fatality or like, the Grand Theft Auto. They're like
Wasted.
Wasted. I laughed a lot at that. I thought that was very funny.
And then at the end when Jay lets them off, the guy goes, "Get out of jail free card."
Can I ask you? I mean, I'm laughing at it. You're laughing at it. Is that moment there, that kind of cinematography and editing choice there? What is that supposed to achieve? Like, do you know? I don't think I'm supposed to laugh at that. It's like, this is a dramatic moment.
The getting shot in black and white.
Yeah, then the Dutch angle that gets formed and the black and white douche thing, and it freeze frames. Like, I'm not supposed to find it funny, but I do.
I think it is meant to be played sincerely.
That's why I love Om Shanti Om even more, because Om Shanti Om knew like how fucking over the top it was. Like that final sequence with this fucking chandelier and the.
Well, that film, was a love letter to the Bollywood industry.
Yeah, but that one knew. It was like, guys, this is high energy. Like, this is amusing and Shakespearean in a way.
That's one of the things I really love about doing Bollywood films on Pictures Powwow, because moment that I always remember is from our main Hunna episode. There was a moment where you were describing to the listening people, like, Bartek's looking at me right now with puppy dog eyes because I'm shitting on a film he loves. And I didn't know how to react to that because I genuinely was like fascinated, like, oh, I'm having a serious conversation about this film that I always kind of treated as being like above criticism.
Yeah.
Because being so used to Bollywood films, I watch them with like different sort of expectations. Like I kind of absorb myself into the type of industry it is, where there are films that I have watched that I've criticized and be like, I didn't like that one as much, but I'm a lot more forgiving of a lot of things. And with like the editing thing with the shot, like I remember having seen the film before, like I would have just seen that as like, oh yeah, this is just how they're dramatizing the moment. But now that we're talking about it, in this kind of space where we talk about many different kinds of films analytically, it is suddenly funny to me.
Yeah, because there is that thing of like, obviously there's a cultural difference.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the thought process is there to do it, because in our cultural context, if you edited that into a movie, it would be funny.
Yeah.
And even then, we talked about this recently, where talking about Tarantino again, in Django Unchained, he used filmmaking techniques that were the standard of yesteryear, but used them in the modern context, and they gave an amusing effect, such as the intense snap zooms, which were commonplace in old kung fu movies and in old westerns and in old Hollywood movies, and they're not like we don't still use them, but the way he uses them, and the way he clearly uses them to evoke a time period of cinema, brings on a laughing effect when you see Leonardo DiCaprio turn around and smile and it snap zooms in perfect. So you're giggling a little bit. But that wasn't funny back in the day when they used to make those movies. But like, times have changed, cultural differences and cinema change. And I'm sure that even then, like if we looked at modern Bollywood filmmaking techniques and compared it to Dhoom 2, there would be vast differences. Like, I don't know what modern Bollywood films are doing. Would they still make that choice?
I haven't seen too many. Like, I think the newest one I would have seen would have been back in like 2018.
Did Dhoom 3 make that similar type of choice?
Dhoom 3, that was 2012.
Because that's like 6 years later.
Yeah, it was literally 6 years
And cinema
later.
has changed. Even Bollywood cinema has changed by then.
Yeah, at this point though, that I've seen that film 10 years ago, so it's hard for me to remember, but yeah, I remember a big part of that film was set in like a London circus, so there definitely would have been like showy aspects going on there. I think maybe there was some sort of drama like that. I remember that film also did have a very similar two-act structure to this film, where for the first act, following the cops a little bit more. There's actually a mystery about like, oh, how is the villain doing these things? Because the whole thing is like, this guy who's working the circus is likely to be the villain, but he has like this alibi that we cannot break. How is he doing it? And then the intermission, like scene just before the intermission, is the reveal of like, oh, that's how it happens. And then the second half, we mostly follow him.
I think there's an element too of, and again, my sample size is not too huge, but the most recent Indian film we did was
Sultan's definitely the
Sultan,
newest.
and that was very different.
Yeah, that one's
to
mid-2010s.
the other ones we've done.
2017, that's definitely the newest.
That's very different to Dhoom 2 or to Main Huna and Om Shanti Om. That's very different, and I mentioned that at the time, and I was like, oh, but maybe it's a different filmmaker. But now we've done, a couple of films from the early to mid 2000s from a couple of different filmmakers. There is a definite like style of as there is when we look back at the 2000s in Western filmmaking. There's a definite style. Our style was very much influenced by The Matrix, and in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
A lot of the big blockbusters were influenced by that. And I think that's fair to say that you could even say that some minor of that rippled over to India. There was lots of musical choices in this. I was like, oh man, that reminds me of that Matrix score. Especially that kind of techno-y,
Maybe next year I'll try to pick another newer one just so we can have a look.
Give me a 90s one, you coward.
I think Duplicate is...
Duplicate! Let's do it! Bartek mentioned this before the pod.
I mentioned it before the pod. You
do a double feature where it's Duplicate and Fan, and we see two different versions of Shah Rukh Khan playing two people.
Yeah, we could.
Dual roles.
That one was...
That would be fun.
I remember Fan, I think we were doing the drama degree at the time, so that was like early 2010s.
I thought that was 2014.
Yeah, I think it's 2014. I think it is. I think it was right when we were
finishing university, because we knew each other at that point.
I definitely remember, meeting a friend of mine on the tram to university, and me catching the tram really kind of puts me in, what year it was.
Any particular things you want to touch on about Dhoom 2? This is your revisit. This is your recommendation.
One thing to mention about Hritik Roshan, our lead villain of the film, is he is known for being an excellent dancer.
He was excellent.
Yes, that's one thing that he is super, super well known for, and definitely the Dhoom Machala, Dhoom once again.
He's very good with his body.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember I mentioned last week I was tossing up like 3 films to pick, and 2 of them were ones with him. The other one was one where he plays a adult who's very autistic, mentally young. And there's a lot of scenes. He lives in like a ruralish kind of village in the mountains with like snow. And there's like a scene of him, dressed absolutely not for the snow, like dancing on a snowy mountain. It was like just the way he waves his body is.
He was very good with the body. Like his face was, he's doing that like that actor face. Was like, look at me, I'm smoldering and sexy. That's why I liked what was the Khan from Sultan?
Salman.
I love his dancing the most out of any we've done, because he really lets loose with his face as well as his body. Like, he has a lot of expression in that movie when he's doing his dances and stuff. He's still probably my favorite lead that we've had in any of these movies.
To be honest with him, like, my mum...
Even his brief appearance in Om Shanti Om was like, oh, breath of fresh air.
If you ever rewatch Om Shanti Om, you'll recognize Hritik now. With Salman, like, my mum loves him. I've only seen 2 films with him. Both were around the same time. Like Sultan was the second one. The other one was also like a mid-2010s one. That's always been one that's like, oh, maybe that one. That one visually is really interesting because it's like set in a palace in the middle of a river. And it's like, ooh, really beautiful kind of stuff there. Yeah,
but you're right. The dancing was very good here. I thought it was marvelously done. I didn't laugh at it. I was just genuinely in awe of it. I was like, wow. And they didn't need to do what some of the other ones have done, where they're like very lavish with the production. Like, some of it was just like, here they are just dancing and look at it go. We don't need to do over-the-top camera swirls or one-take shots or like have these elaborate costume changes and all of that. It was like, there was some of that there obviously as well, but like a lot of it was just, look at him dance, or look at her dance, or look at their bodies. A lot of like, look at their bodies, look at them go.
Yeah, I remember I was watching the dances in this film last night, and I was, I'm not a dance expert in terms of like analyzing dance or anything like that, but I was trying to, make some effort to see if there's anything I could point out. And especially with like the women who were dancing, like a lot of the moves they were making, a lot of arm stuff going on around their heads. And I was just picturing them like wearing
a lot of rubbing of the navel.
Yeah, I was picturing like, because they're wearing like modern clothes, they're in like dance clubs and like these underground like sewery looking places. It's like, oh, this is the villain hangout. And I was picturing them wearing a lot more like traditional clothing.
And then
like,
they show you them in traditional clothing doing it sometimes.
Yeah,
it was for music, actually.
Yeah, and I was like, oh yeah, I could kind of see some of these moves like being a bit more in like traditional stuff, but this is like a modernized version of it. So it definitely feels like a sort of maybe turn of the century, turn of the millennium version of like some of these traditional Indian dance kind of moves or conventions.
A moment that brought me humor, and I thought it was a great little character insight, and this may be me reading into it from my Western point of view, but when Ali was looking at the female cop,
yeah,
and he had his imagination sequence where they're married and they're still handcuffed and they're married, they have kids and all of that, I found it rather striking that she goes from like sexy cop lady outfit to the traditional outfit, while he does not. He remains the same. Like he doesn't go into any kind of traditional Indian male attire in any of it. And I thought that was an interesting little commentary about like how he sees what they have to serve for him and he doesn't need to change, which is kind of what he's like in the movie. He's like, I don't need to change. I just need to find a girl who's right for me. And I'm like, yeah. And then he does, and then he gets bored. And then he moves on, and he's like, don't worry, we have the next case. And that was like the lamest ending. I'm sorry. That sucked. But it's like, don't worry, we're gonna do case. It's like, what's the new case? Like, at least when you do that in these movies, make it a little exciting. Like have Commissioner Gordon come up with the Joker card. We have a new case.
Yeah, just like an element of a made up villain that's like really intricate.
Yeah, like
look at this signature.
Yeah, like oh, you don't have to worry. We've got a new case, and you see our main guy who's on the phone saying that he's looking at a building on fire or something,
or even something on the level of like there's a new guy calling himself the Green Goblin. It's like a striking name like that. It's like, what?
Yeah, and he's out of his mind.
He's out of his mind.
I say. Once again.
I thought one thing that you would have liked, going back to the Ali, imagining thing, was like when he was being replaced with Jay, and like the kids,
that was fucking hilarious.
And the kids were wearing Jay's clothes when it cut away,
and Jay's serious face, and it never changes. Like he's not amused. Like even in his imagination, he's not amused. That was a particularly strong. Or when he had the dream sequence again, but with the sister, and it's like he has more kids though. Like there's more of them.
She looks like she'd fuck more.
Yeah, I'd breed more. Like, not only that, fuck more, but breed more.
He goes, Mummy, I'm doing what I have to do.
I wouldn't mind talking about some behind-the-scenes stuff if you don't have any actual further, like, in-the-film things you want to discuss. It's not too much. I just, there are some things that I read that I was like, I'm curious. I mean, I feel like I need to bring it up.
Yeah,
but are there any particular moments that you loved in this watching?
I think we got all of them. I just want to give a big shout out to the jet ski scene in Ali's first scene. How it just comes from underwater. Like he was just waiting there underwater.
I laughed at that.
That was great.
The film made me very sad afterwards because I read the IMDb trivia, which was very repetitious, by the way. Somebody on IMDb needs to edit that fucker down because there's like 2 facts repeated like 15 times, and it's very annoying. And some of the facts, I'm like, this is worded in a way where it sounds the same, but now it's different. Like one of them's like, oh, he gained weight, and then actually, no, he lost weight.
Yeah, there was like one or two
which
contradictions, yeah.
But a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff and even reviews on IMDb that I read were talking about how they made the lead actress lose a lot of weight for the role, and that it was very much of that And we see this with not just Bollywood, but with mainstream movies, where it's just like anytime you kind of read the studios made these actors physically transform themselves in ways for pure sexual gratification of the viewers, it makes me go, okay.
We were even weirded out by that in The Guest, where it was to the male lead.
Yeah, but that's very true actually. Or Anne Hathaway in The Dark Knight Rises.
There was something like that, wasn't there?
There was that one journalist who asked her what diet she needed to get into that cat suit, and then she's like, "Do you need to know? Do you need to get into a cat suit like a guy?"
Oh, speaking of that, there was that trivia point that Sonali, I think the character's name was literally based on Catwoman. So I guess there is a
so my Batman jokes were real. I knew all along.
Yeah. Apt.
There was one description or trivia point that was they on purposely made the cop characters make dumb choices so that you would feel more sympathy for the villains. And when I read that, I went, there you go. There's a problem. Like something in my brain was like tickling, going, there's something I don't like here. What is it? Oh, it's because they on purposely made our two lead characters make really annoying decisions.
Can we trust that though? Because that trivia point was only mentioned once. It wasn't repeated.
But how? Okay, you got a good point there. I'm gonna have to fact check you, and if I see it's there, because I gave up reading the trivia.
Yeah, I know.
Like it's so long because they have many repetitious
I read it all,
points.
and it was tedious. It was like, yep, here, this again.
This again. But the most prevalent thing was them having to force the actors to change their bodies. I mean,
it was like all the leads. I think it was.
What do you think about that? Like, how do you view that? Because there is that line, right, in movies where it's like, well, you want Superman to look like a fucking beefcake. It's Superman. And I imagine for this, you want your cop guys to look like machismo, sexy cop guys. But then there's a part of me that's just like, okay, but does the actor of Ali really need to bulk up that much, considering what little he's in the movie for?
He was a major one that I was like, did he really need to?
Did he really need to? And
and not to take away from like the women, like they had to, like obviously there was a purpose to it, but the whole idea of having to radically shift your bodies, being made to do that for a role, it does not sit right with me, even though I can see why. But
and stuff like one of the actresses lived on eating oranges for 3 days before their bikini scene, and it's like, I don't.
Yeah, it's not like Robert De Niro where he does it to himself. It's like, okay, well, he's doing it, but
and even then, there's that argument made right now, right, with method actors and like those who transform their bodies, and it's just like, guys, please. J.K. Simmons doesn't need to physically bulk up to play Commissioner Gordon because they threw him in a 3-piece suit with a trench coat and we never saw it anyway. You remember that? There was like iconic image of J.K. Simmons like at the gym doing weights and he's like fucking ripped, and it's because he's getting ready for Zack Snyder's Commissioner Gordon interpretation. It's like then in the Justice League movies, like in both cuts, it's like he's just in layers of clothes, so it's like it doesn't even matter.
I didn't even know he was Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah, he became Commissioner Gordon, and don't worry, he's back now. Oh, Coca-Cola was the other big thing we should bring up.
Oh yes, so I've mentioned before, Shah Rukh Khan is very obviously sponsored by Pepsi. Hritik Roshan is unambiguously sponsored by Coca-Cola. In the other film I was thinking of, I'll say this much, there's an alien in the film and it drinks a can of Coke.
I'm watching the fucking Spice World movie again. Does he make out with the alien too? Oh, man. I just, by the way, talking about the IMDb thing, everyone finds every trivia point interesting. There's no 5 out of 6. It's always 5 out of 5. People find this interesting. So, Bartek, that just says there's no doubt.
You have no interest.
There's no doubt that if any trivia point is in there, even if it's in there once, it is important because people found it interesting. I can't think of too much else to say. Are we expecting any further Dhoom films, or is it properly over? Did Dhoom 3 do well? Because critically on IMDb, which is only, I don't know what Indian cinema's like go-to review aggregate is. Like, what do Indian viewers look towards as a good marker of like whether I should check out a film's rating or not? Like, do they go to IMDb and go, "Oh, Dhoom 3 is only 5.3. That's bullshit. That's a bunch of Westerners who don't get Dhoom." Or is Dhoom 3 that bad?
I'm actually not sure if there's any particular like online review aggregate that they care about. It all just seems to be like, you
Word of mouth.
To be honest, it seems to me like everyone just seems to know every film. I know that's literally impossible, but like my Indian friend Maria, like usually when I'll mention a Bollywood film, she'll like, "Oh yeah, I know the one."
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they need it or if maybe they just are aware of it, or I don't know.
But what happened to the Dhoom franchise?
Yeah, maybe it's more of like a money thing. I don't know. I feel like people, would have been positive towards it. I mean, I definitely thought it was a step down, but the villain, like the third of the major Khans, who I've mentioned a few times, like he was very interesting throughout the film. We were following him for most of it. His dynamic with Jay, because Jay's also got like, a bit of a deceitful thing going on with him.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember stepping away from being like, I had a good time, but it wasn't Doom 2 for me.
This probably had the best villain in any of these movies we've watched.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that.
Main Hunasa was the worst. I can't even tell you what their deal was.
He was a terrorist.
Who lived in the sewers next to A in this movie. That was the thing that really threw me for a loop. They made a big deal of 2 points, actually. One, here's how we figure out when he's going to rob next.
Yes.
And then the cop at the end is like sitting on his hands, like, when's he going to rob next? It's like, dude, you figured out the code. Don't you know?
Well, I think that's his whole, like, agitation. He's been waiting for 6 or 7 months and it hasn't happened.
I feel like after a point, you should be like, oh, it's not happening. All right. But there were other points in the movie when he didn't. But there were other points in the movie when he didn't know when he was going to do something. And I'm like, I feel like you should with your crack code.
Well, when he discovered, like, the July thing, it was like, well, he knows the city that it's going to happen in, the date, but he wasn't sure which of the 2 places. That's why he was, we had half the Ali here, me and the girl here.
Right.
And then eventually he found, like, a clue, like, oh, this thing's damaged, so it's not going to be here. This is a thing I missed.
And the other thing was they made a big hoopla about, we don't know what he does, with all the things he steals. I was waiting for like some kind of poignant reason to that. Like they say it's like he does it for the ego. I'm like, yeah. But like, what does he do with all these? Like, where's the crown?
Yeah.
I was thinking about that a lot.
There's like a line at the very end where he's like, here's a code and location.
Here's my watch and it'll give you all the family jewels. If he, you know what I was referencing. If he looked at him and said, now listen here, Jay. I spent all of the money on jewels, a bag of jewels, and the other half on sending a part of my family's house to Pakistan to get smacked over. And then,
okay.
Now you're remembering.
I was thinking, like, is he trying to reference Jim Sterling? Because that was more of like a jewel.
No. He spent $250,000 on jewels, and the other bit on taking his family's house to Pakistan to get smashed. And he rented a helicopter, and that's it. The money gone.
The Pakistan thing gave it away. Yes.
If I said he jerked off a horse, which helped him practice to jerk off an elephant, then you would have remembered.
What I really liked about that elephant coming was line.
I just Doom once again.
I just remembered I was meant to make that a joke in this episode.
Doom, come again.
Once more, come on, you people.
Ah, man. Did they use it too many times or just enough?
I remember in Sultan, one of your big criticisms was that the theme song played too much. Are you more forgiving of it this time?
Well, because it was in a style of music that I find annoying to begin with. So I found it somewhat charming. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, there's certain type of music, like I said, this reminded me of the Matrix type of music of that time, where it's like breakbeat or whatever it's called, that specific type of house music. and I don't like it, but in a way, I ironically enjoy it when it turns up in movies because I hate it so much.
It's used so gratuitously.
So them using it all the time turned around as somewhat being charming. And it was more in line because the film did have a sillier tone to it than Sultan did.
Yeah.
That was
a drama.
That was more of a drama film. So if that film had like, I can't even remember what its musical thing was, but if that film had like, Dhoom, Dhoom, once again, that was a funny, like that added humor factor to Dhoom 2, which is already playing into humorous things. Like, I don't know if it's supposed, again, like with that editing thing at the very end, I don't know if I'm supposed to find it laugh-inducing every time they spam the Dhoom theme, but I did.
I think with the Dhoom theme, it's more of like a sting that you would play a bit more, whereas with the Sultan one, it was more of like a genuine song, like a Sultan.
Well, this is like, it's the Indiana Jones theme when you spam Indiana Jones's theme during action scenes in those films, you know, yeah. But instead it's Dhoom, Dhoom once again.
Like the Sultan example, I think a lot of like the theme used there was like just juxtaposed with like slow motion of him like walking or doing something, so it is a bit more for like a dramatic
slow
effect.
Motion, man.
Whereas for this one, yeah, it is like you could kind of almost fit it anywhere in the film where like something's happening.
So are you ready to hear my recommendation for next episode?
I'm keen.
I'm recommending
a second film in a trilogy.
Gee, I am
sorry.
I
didn't mean to make this awkward.
Could line.
Ryan, you're meant to recommend.
Yeah, talking about recommending things, I recommended The Dark Knight Rises or any other Dark Knight movies. So what am I complaining? I was like,
because I haven't seen Batman Begins and I don't remember Dark Knight because I was tired.
Well, that's a good segue. I'm recommending a film that you would like, and I hope you don't watch it when you're tired.
Fast and Furious
9. I
9.
haven't seen it myself, but I've read it synopsis and I said Bartek will like this. It's a film called Bad Genius. Came out a few years back. I forget I think it's a Thai film, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll be watching it with subtitles, and it's an Asian language film. I do believe it's Thai, but I could be mistaken. Where basic pitch is loose. This is the loose pitch. I don't want to give too much away. Is a bunch of high school students do an elaborate heist type deal to cheat at the test that they're having to take.
I like that.
So it's supposed to be fun. It's been on my to watch list last I checked, and you have to look at this for yourself, Bartek. For Australian viewers, last I knew it was on SBS
On demand.
Okay. But double check that, triple check. I don't know. I have a copy of it myself that I don't need to worry about it.
Sure.
But Bad Genius. So that will be the one we're looking at. Again, I haven't seen it myself. I know a bit about it. It's been one of those ones that's been recommended a couple of times to me directly and from other sources. So
What year is it?
I want to say it's from it's within the last 6 years.
Okay.
So,
sure.
I'll have it all in the episode description below. But yep, that's it, people. You can find us on the social media to hit us up with your recommendations on our social medias of Facebook and Twitter, or you can, if you want to follow us and or hit us up on things, or if you want to hit us up directly, you can email us at spitandpolished@gmail.com. If you're feeling brave, hit us up on both our social and our email in case one of us doesn't look at the social and the other does look at the email. We'll get it.
Literally yesterday, we got a Facebook message, really, really long one too.
And then I woke up, I was like, I didn't read it. And I was like, I got this email. I was like, I should message Bartek. And then I see Bartek's added this film in the list and he's got a little thing saying, hey, Ryan, this thing.
Yeah, not only did this person recommend a film, they gave us a request of something to talk about.
There you go. That is all I've got for you. I'm out. Until we meet once again, good eating to you. Remember to be kind to each other, whatever sign-offs that I say on whatever podcast I host.
I had a really good, really big line. Why don't you give me my line?
I'm waiting. What's the line? Oh, Dhoom Dhoom once again.
I had a really great, really big Dhoom once again.